Welcome everyone, welcome. If you're new to the channel, welcome to the channel. This is where we try to give overviews here and analysis of everything to do with your CSEC exams. If you are new to the channel, please hit the red button below, turn your bell notifications on so that you will be aware at all times of the uploads. If you're returning to the channel, thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you have been learning and I hope you have truly been preparing for these final exams. We are doing Wilfred Owen Dulce et Decorum Est. Perhaps not one of your favorites, yes, but guess what? It has to be learned, so let's get straight into it. Bent double, like old beggars on the sacks. Knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5-9s that dropped behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man on fire or lime. Dim, through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such a high zest children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie, Dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori. Now this was just my reading of the poem itself, so let's get straight into it, the line-by-line analysis. This one, people, will be a little bit longer because it is a long poem, yes, but please stick around, make sure you have nothing to do, listen carefully to what is going on here. It is a dramatic monologue, and it starts out as a description of a horrifying incident on the battlefield of World War I between 1914 to 1918. Then it becomes a reprimand of someone who has tried to fool or deceived eager men into regarding death in war as a glorious and patriotic event. Truth is that many people want us to believe that war is glorious, yeah, because there is honor when a soldier dies or whatever. But Wilfred Owen is showing us that there is more to a war than what meets the eyes. There are alternating rhyming patterns, yes, in every 4 lines of the patterns, but let's go straight into the title. The title, Dulce est Decorum Est, is completed at the end of the poem by pro patria mori, the traditional Latin aphorism or saying which means sweet and fitting it is to die for your country. The Latin word mori means to die, and this is what ends the sentence. In lines 1 to 2, bent double, like old beggars on the sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge. This is where the persona, who is also one of the soldiers in this war, he compares the exhausted group to old beggars who are walking along and they are so bent under their heavy burdens that they are bending forward, actually. Then he compares them to coughing witches. So as they angrily make their way through the muddy battlefield. Now there is onomatopoeia here in line 2, and this helps to support the description, coughing like hags. Right, so line 3, haunting flares, flames that are shot into the air to brighten an area on the battlefield, usually with a green light. Now even though these soldiers are leaving the battlefront, the flares behind them keeps them worried because they don't know what is coming behind them, and so of course they will be worried. In line 6 we have bloodshot, with blood serving as the shoes. The word also brings bloodshot to mind, and quite appropriately, because when we think of war we think of blood. We think of death and dying. Automatically we think of death and dying. Now in line 78, deaf even to, and it ends with softly behind. This means this is representative of the fact that added to their other handicaps, the soldiers were also quite unaware. They didn't know how long the whistling sound would go on for. That was the whistling sound by the poison gas bombs, and which was falling right behind them. They were unaware of all of this happening behind them because at that point they were trying to get away. In lines 9 to 10, an ecstasy, just in time. Now this follows the warning shout. The soldiers are in panic, and they had little or no time to get their gas mask on. Of course, they would need the gas mask if there is poison gas coming from behind. In lines 11 to 14, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire. Or line, one soldier doesn't have on his gas mask. And of course, if you have watched movies, I wouldn't say if you have experienced this, but if you have watched movies where poison gas, people have been exposed to poison gas, then you will understand that feeling. The man is screaming, he's half falling, as if he is walking on burning coals. Now that is one image that you could always relate to. Now line 15 to 16, dim through, and it ends with, I saw him drowning. The persona sees the man dying through the fogged glass of his gas mask and the haze of poison gas, which looks green in the light of the flares. This is a metaphor. And this metaphor means that the man is drowning in a green sea. Line 17, my helpless sight. This is an example of a transferred epithet or adjective, which makes it seem at first as if it is his sight and not he that feels helpless in his dreams. Line 18, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. Plunges, the word plunges gives the idea, and of course the sound of lunging forward, but it's also that of falling into water, which fits the image of drowning. Gutters compares the diamond's last gasp to the flickering of a candle flame just before it goes out. The sounds of guttering and choking are also likened to onomatopoeia. In line 19, smothering dreams, the persona also feels as if he is suffocating in his dream, and he here suggests that the person he is addressing should also share those dreams. Lines 19 to 20, you too could pace, and it ends with flung him in. He suggests that in the dreams, the other person would also walk behind the open cart, and that the open cart that the dead soldier was actually put in. Now, all of this comes in the terror of war, and the persona here is hoping that the persons who are reading this poem will see the whole graphic presentation of what they faced during the war. Lines 21 to 22. And watch, which ends, and watch, and then it goes on to the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil sick of sin. The dead man's eyes open. Dead man's open eyes would be rolling as his face, which is hanging over the back of the wagon, looks like that of an evil spirit that is disgusted with the harmful acts. Here, perhaps Owen might be hinting that the soldiers had become sickened by the terrible acts of warfare that they also have to commit. Lines 23 to 26. If you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. Now this is a long one, so listen very carefully. The persona suggests that in these dreams, every time the wagon would hit a bump, the other person should, just like the persona, hear the horrible sound of the dead man's blood coming from the poisoned foam that is on his lungs. The blood is also seen as disgusting as regurgitated pus from the horrible sores. Now imagine that image. That image is outstanding. From the horrible sores on the tongues of little children. And finally, in lines 27 to 30, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. Here, and this is important, the persona addresses the other person as his friend, the person who is talking to. Then he implies that if he had not dreamt about the repulsive realities of war, he would not be so excited about telling young children who are eager for any kind of fame to believe that the traditional falsehood of being good and honorable, that it was a good thing for one to die in war. This reveals then that the persona has been addressing one of those people who have been encouraging young people to join an army or to join a war. Now, the poet himself, and this is general information here, the poet himself was also a young officer in the First World War in which he was killed. His aim in this one is that some persons, and some other poems, is to show the horrors of war at a time when others thought it was a good thing to enter into a war. The situation is with a company of weary soldiers on the battlefield. As night comes and they trudge away from the fighting, a bomb comes near them. A bomb lands near them. This is one of the poison gases. Perhaps you'd want to call it a nuclear bomb, yes? No. Quickly they put on their gas mask, but one unfortunate soldier is not quick enough. He is not fast enough to put on that gas mask because you're not expecting it. So of course you would not be ready to put it on. Even though they are trained, yes, he did not put on his in time. And we are given one of the most horrifying descriptions of his death throes. The incident leads the speaker to comment that, in contrast to the high rhetoric of the country's leaders, there is nothing good about dying in war. In fact, he is implying to his readers that it is ugly, painful, sordid, and also wasteful. The poem starts with a description of the exhausted men marching to their quarters, looking very different from the smart uniformed soldiers who had left before the war. The speaker is one of the soldiers, and he, of course, begins to tell the story of the time when the gas bomb landed nearby and the failure of a soldier to work his way into his gas mask to save himself. And so it continues where he gives the gruesome details. Yes, and I'm repeating this just for further clarification and emphasis here. He is not quick enough. The soldier is not quick enough. And so this memory lingers on in the persona's mind, the memory of the man's suffering, because it was a horrifying death, perhaps. Yes, it was. The final section describes in detail the indignity, the agony, the pain, the suffering of the soldier who dies. And it ends by discrediting anyone who tells people that it is good and honorable to enter into war, because at the end of the day, it is not good. The death of any soldier is one of the most horrifying experiences. Now, there are 4 stanzas here, and this we're dealing with right now is the structure of the poem. There are 4 stanzas, and each stanza has a different length. There is one stanza that has only 2 lines. Now, to some persons, this may be some amount of disorder. But guess what? To Wilfred Owen, this disorder would have been representative of a person in war. When a gas bomb, a poison bomb drops anywhere near you, there is going to be disorder. There is going to be chaos. Regardless of the game plan that these people enter into in the war, there is going to be challenges. There are going to be surprises. And when the surprises come, everything becomes chaotic. So the irregular pattern on each stanza, the disorderly presentation, as you might call it, of each stanza, was not a random thing. What happened is that perhaps Owen tried to show the readers that there was disorder on that particular night with that particular memory. Now, he still uses regular rhyming pattern, alternating rhyming pattern, as if there is an inevitability, a hopeless routine about what is happening. The rhyming pattern suggests routine, but the disorder of each stanza suggests that chaos had taken place. Each stanza addresses a specific phase of the speaker's experience. First, he gives a description of the tired men who are marching back to camp after fighting all day. And then suddenly, there is a change in the walk that these men are putting forward. There is a gas bomb, and everything goes chaotic, causing them to move more quickly than they were moving. They were tired at first, they were fatigued at first, but with the introduction of the poison gas here, everybody begins to move more quickly. Next, there is an agonizing recurring memory of the dying moments of one poor fellow who did not make it on time to put his mask on. And finally, there is a stanza where the speaker specifically appeals to the reader. He is appealing to whoever is reading this poem when he says, "my friend." Now, saying it means that he is talking to someone as if he knows them. And there is no way that he would even perpetuate the old lie that there is glory in dying for one's native country. The run-on lines are effective here in terms of the structure because they also emphasize how long and weary the journey is. Of course, there is a pause in whatever is going on in one line, as there is a pause in whatever is going on the battlefield, and then it goes straight into the next line. Occasionally, though, And when we look at stanza 1, there are full stops that comes in midline, which would suggest perhaps that there are stops and hesitations of the men here as they march along. You know, they are tired, so they would perhaps be stopping. They were exhausted as well, and so they could not keep that brisk movement going. So the full stops here, and perhaps even the dash, would mean that there is a pause. Both run-on lines and midline breaks, they contribute to the stumbling effects of the line. All right, so I imagine you are getting tired right now, right? It has been 15 minutes, hasn't it? But all right, just stick around a little bit, because a little bit more, we are going to be looking at the techniques or the devices that have been used in the poem. Simile is the first one. One example is a bent double like beggars, which shows that even though the soldiers are young, the fact that they are in war, this has aged them significantly. Metaphor, an example is the phrase under a green sea, which is probably used to describe the color of the poison gas seen from a fellow soldier's helmet or a gas mask. Now this metaphor here, this one I could literally see when I read the poem for the first time, because I'm a movie person. So I definitely realized that the green gas often comes when there is a poison gas anywhere around. I'm not sure if anybody else will be able to relate to it that way, but hey, guess what? That was just my way of trying to get you to understand it. Then there is repetition of gas. It shows that the attack is sudden and the soldiers panic. They only have a few seconds to find and put on these gas masks in order to save their lives. There is assonance. The most poignant example of assonance is the guttering, choking, drowning, to show that the unfortunate soldier is desperate in pain and slowly losing his strength as he fights in vain to survive. Alliteration definitely is in this poem. An example is that sick of sin, which highlights the sinister atmosphere of death and terror. Now, quickly, we are moving along to the others. There is irony. The Latin title Dulce et Decorum Est pro patria mori translates into literally how sweet and fitting it is to die for one's native land. But when Owen did this poem, there was no beauty in dying. The man who died, the soldier who died a horrible death. He was guttering. He was choking on the froth that was coming from his corrupted lungs. It was almost as cancer, and everybody knows how terrible cancer can be. And so Owen points out quite clearly that there was no honor in dying on the battlefield. Rhyme, and we don't have to get too technical here about the rhyming scheme. Sludge, trudge, fumbling, stumbling, cud, blood, boots, hoots. The final rhyme of the poem is glory and mori. Glory, to die. It's full of irony. Fact is that glory is a good thing, and mori is die. And for the fact that the poet rhymes here, it means then that it is ironic. There is no glory in dying. Now, last of all, the mood and the tone in the poem. The mood of the speaker is one of compassion and panic as the gas bomb falls. Then there is fury as the speaker recognizes that the people in authority, they continue to promote, to glorify something that could cause a waste of life, and they deceitfully, it is with deceit that they actually romanticize this kind of death. So once more, we have come to the end of another poetry video. I am trying to go as fast as I can, people. Please bear with me. Keep your subscription buttons on. Keep your bell buttons on for this week and this weekend. I'll be going as quickly as I can, and I do promise that I am going to try to do a sample of writing the comparative essay for the poem and for the short story. Let's see how that goes for this weekend. I know that the exams is coming up quickly, but keep your subscription buttons on. If you're new, if you're coming here again, if you're a repeated visitor to the channel, keep your subscription buttons on. Keep your bell notifications on, definitely, so that, guess what? You will not miss out on any uploads that comes your way. Thank you so much for watching, and please stay connected with the channel. Thank you.